My name's Jim Lucan, and today we're out here by my bird box for a very good reason. I want to continue talking today about a small piece of a book I recently wrote titled Coastal South Carolina Fish and Game, History, Culture, and Conservation. And the bit in this book that I want to talk about today is the role of the Audubon Society in the conservation movement in coastal South Carolina. Now, to understand this, we need to go back to the year 1906 and look at what the situation was at that particular point in time. Now, we all know about the Audubon Society now. It's a very successful bird conservation organization. They do all kinds of good work as far as conserving birds and other wildlife species. Back then, the Audubon Society was just getting started. It had formed in response to about the 2 decades of market hunting and plume hunting that had been going on. Now, plume hunting was where people would shoot egrets and other types of shore birds just to harvest their feathers and sell them so people could make hats out of them. Had a huge impact on birds, this market hunting and plume hunting. And so the Audubon Society had formed. They had a enforcement force in the field, and they were attempting to enforce the laws that were on the books. And about this time, 1906, there was very little motivation in Columbia for the state of South Carolina to protect wildlife. They had lots of laws on the books, but very little enforcement. And so it was decided in about 1906 that they would turn the entire operation over to South Carolina Audubon Society. When I say that, I mean they would provide them with a little money. Audubon Society would be in charge of the warden force, and they would be in charge of enforcing game laws. Audubon Society was responsible for recommending the first chief game warden, and this was ended up being a fellow by the name of Henry Rice Jr. James Henry Rice Jr. was an avid bird conservationist. He immediately set to work to try to get new protections in place. He worked very hard to try to get these protections in place. He was thwarted just about every move that he made. He had no resources. There was little cooperation in Columbia. And to make a long story short, he only lasted about 3 years in the job. Next person recommended by Audubon was a fellow by the name of Alfred Richardson. Alfred Richardson was a little more successful. He actually ended up being the chief game warden for many years. But in about 1916, it was decided that the state of South Carolina would take over the warden force, would take over the administration of enforcement of game laws, and the Audubon Society was essentially pushed out of the process. Nevertheless, if we have to say what was the most important group as far as starting conservation in the state of South Carolina, it would have to be the Audubon Society.